Is Manila safer than Jakarta? I'm going to talk about my own personal experiences in this video. So these are my opinions based on my time in Jakarta and my time in Manila. Let's get into the video. Let me start by saying Indonesia as a country has around 350,000 foreigners. So that's the whole of Indonesia. Most of them are probably in Bali, I would think. If you go to Bali, it's full of Aussies. Nothing against you Aussies, but the last time I was in Bali, it was swarming with Aussies. Probably because it's quite close, well, relatively speaking. So 350,000 foreigners in the whole of Indonesia. And in the Philippines, if you watched my previous video, you'll know that there's only 200,000 foreigners in the Philippines. Now, the reason I wanted to make this video today is because I've been thinking about it for some time, and some of you, or one of you, left a comment on my last video about the misconception that the Philippines is dangerous. So let's get into that. I'm going to tell you about my personal experiences, and I'm going to start with Jakarta. The first time I went to Jakarta, I think that would have been around 2010, and I was there for about 5 months in Jakarta, and I was told when I got there not to use any old taxis. So we were told only use the Bluebird taxis. That was the first piece of advice I got. And we stayed in Arya Duta Suites in Semanggi in Jakarta. The accommodation it's about $500 a month, not too bad. And the first thing I want to say is, you know, every time we went to the office, we would take the Bluebird taxi. Never had an issue. One night, I was out with a friend, and it was late, and we couldn't get a Bluebird taxi. So we decided to take a street taxi. Big mistake. What happened was, my friend started arguing with the driver because he was taking us all around. It was a meter taxi, and one thing led to another, and the driver actually leaned underneath his seat, pulled out a crowbar, and started attacking us. So not a good experience. Needless to say, we managed to get him to stop eventually, and we got out of there as fast as we could. I'll tell you a wee story about Jakarta when I was there in 2010. Some of the boys from work used to drink in a bar called Bar, and I think the first time I went in there, I was told there would be a live band on. So we went there and the band wasn't on, so I got talking to the barmaid in Bar, and I was asking her about the band, and she said, oh, there's an English guy who plays guitar. I said, oh, that's unusual. Anyway, the next time we went to the Bar, the live band were there. Lo and behold, this English guy on guitar was an old colleague of mine that I met first time in Oslo in Norway back in 1998. So if you're watching, Steve, and you know, I hadn't seen Steve for years, well, 12 years. So we had a good catch up anyway. The only time I saw trouble in Jakarta was when we never took the Bluebird taxi. And we even went down to the old Block M. The Block M was really rough. During my time there, I think they closed it because there was so much trouble down there. But the couple of times that I was there, I didn't really see any trouble. So, you know, my experience was good with Jakarta, apart from the taxis. On the subject of taxis, in the Philippines, in Manila, when you land now at the airport in Ninoy Aquino, they have a registration service. So if you want to take a meter taxi, they've got like a wee stand, and there's a guy there who'll take your details. where you're going, what your name is, and he'll write you out a wee receipt thing, and you give part of that to the driver. So it's all registered, which is good. And in Jakarta, they don't have anything like that. At the time when I was there was no sort of registration or anything, so if you took a Bluebird taxi, you would be hailing it from the street. And I remember sometimes we would finish work, if it was raining, almost impossible to get a taxi. The traffic in Jakarta, the worst I've ever seen. Now, you might think Manila's bad, and it is. Jakarta, twice as bad. It could take you an hour to go somewhere that would normally take you 5-10 minutes. Really, really bad. But the people were all good, friendly. I didn't feel in danger any time, apart from that one time in the taxi. So let's talk about Manila. Okay, the first time, I think it was the first time I went there, we actually rented an apartment in Malate for 1 year, me and my wife, before we were married. And I was working in Malaysia at the time, so she was pregnant with our future son, and she was living in Malate, in Manila, with her sister, who was also pregnant at the same time, believe it or not. And her husband works overseas in the Middle East. So anyway, the first time I went there from KL, I think they had been in the apartment for a few weeks. And I got there just after, I think it was about 11 p.m. And I said, I basically dropped my bag, said hello. I said, right, I'm going out for a beer. She said, what? I said, I'm going for a beer. She said, you can't, where? She says, you can't go out, it's not safe. I says, away, come on. Of course it's safe. So I used to go to a German bar called G Point Smorgasbord, and it wasn't very far from the apartment. Never saw any trouble. I'd walk down there, really nice bar. There's a lot of expats in there, but my point is, I never saw any trouble in Manila, but you have to use your common sense. And when I say that, I mean, don't go wandering the streets on your own at 3 in the morning. No. A friend of mine, an English friend of mine who lives in Australia, he was working in Malaysia, same time as me, and he was out wandering the streets 2 in the morning, and he got accosted by a bunch of Indian guys. There's about 5 of them, and they basically mugged him, took his money. Well, I think he gave them the money. They asked for money and he gave it to them. I'm not sure if it would have been me in that position. So the point I'm trying to make is, if you use that, you can be safe. People talk about Manila not being safe. Let me tell you something. Some of the cities in the UK are more dangerous than Manila. Saturday night in Glasgow, Saturday night in London, Birmingham, Bradford, Manchester. I would rather be in Manila any day of the week and twice on a Sunday. We live in the province, in Albay, in the Bicol region, and you never see any trouble there, guys, because there's very few expats. Where you'll find expats, you'll always find trouble. That's all I'm going to say. Incidentally, in Jakarta, we went into many bars. We didn't just drink in Casbar. We went into a lot of bars, and everybody was fine. There's this misconception about the Philippines, about Indonesia. I lived in a place called Batam in Indonesia. It's just off the coast of Singapore. Well, I say just off the coast, it's about an hour on the ferry, and Batam is part of Indonesia. It's an island, part of the Riau Islands. Anyway, listen, if you're looking for trouble, you're going to find it. But as a whole, Jakarta and Manila are as safe as any city in the UK. So to sum up, what I like about Manila is, if you're coming from the airport, your taxi, they take the number of the taxi, they take your name, where you're going. It's all recorded, and this is forward thinking by the Philippines. Indonesia is, well, it's been some time since I was there. I'd be surprised if it's the same when you land in Jakarta, but I would say Manila, I would feel safer in Manila. Yes, there's trouble, yes, there's robberies, yes, there's burglary, but it's the same in any country. This is just based on my experiences, guys, in Jakarta and Manila. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.